welcome to another episode of Resilience with Brad Neufeld. This is the show where you will discover that every challenge that you face in life is conquerable, especially when we work together. Working together with other people is definitely the fastest way to success. Finding those people who can support you in your cause and in your mission, boy, and it just makes life that much more fun. How's that? But anyway, our guest today, I have been wanting this man to come on Resilience for the longest time, Mr. Robert Mooney. He is his upbringing, you're going to hear his story here, from being a foster kid to becoming a lawyer, and now he's working full-time in the foster care industry and just doing all kinds of wonderful things to help that particular dynamic of kids and stuff, and I just love it because, as my audience knows here, Rob, I've been working with at-risk youth for 30 plus years, and so therefore I'm passionate about this as well. But I've been wanting to hear your stories. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Brad. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's get into it. Tell us about your upbringing, because again, when you were telling me a little bit about it, your foster care experience, you bounced to 20 different houses? Is that for real?
Yeah. I changed homes 20 times. I went into the system when I was 6 years old, and then I aged out at 18. And in between, I changed homes 20 times. It actually, ended up being on average once every 8 months. It was a little bit more than that because I actually moved in with the last place. Yeah. I called home, shortly before I turned 16. And then I aged out from there. I actually moved out after living there for a year, but maintained that relationship and then aged out at 18.
Well, so the audience knows, when he uses the term aged out, that means at 18, they're done. There's no more money coming in from any government resources or anything. You're on your own. You've got to figure it out.
Yeah. That's how the term's used, right? So is when you become on your own. Since I was young, there are programs that will extend out financial aid and resources in various states up till 21. I think maybe one state does it till 22. But yeah. So aging out, when I say aged out, I'm referring to being emancipated legally on your own, fend for yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's that was kind of the background. It's there's a fascinating story of growing up and lessons that I learned that along the way that helped me be able to age out successfully, because most don't. The statistics for kids who age out of the U.S. foster care system are absolutely horrendous. 1 in 5 of those kids, when they turn 18, they're instantly homeless. You're an adult and now you're on your own. You don't have a place to live any longer. So if you were in a group setting, you've gotten kicked out of that group setting. Sometimes, foster homes, when the checks stop coming, they'll send the kids on their own. So about 1 in 5 become instantly homeless. But the reality is half of the kids who end up aging out during some time before they're 25 will either be homeless at some point or be incarcerated.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing.
So foster kids who've aged out, foster kids in general, and those who've aged out, heavily overrepresented in our country's homeless population, in our prison systems, and most sadly in our sex traffic victims. The vast majority will come from kids in foster care. 7 out of 10 girls who age out of foster care will be pregnant by the age of 21, before the age of 21.
So not married and pregnant?
Correct. Wow. And so you could go on and on. 3% will get a college degree. The statistics are exceptionally grim for this demographic. I view kids who are going to age out of foster care as one of our most vulnerable populations. And so, having been a kid who aged out, but was able to be successful in professional and personal lives, notwithstanding, the difficulties that were inherent with being a foster child, the abuse and the trauma that took place before that led me to be in foster care, and the uncertainty, the attachment, lack of permanency, and in some cases abuse while in the foster care system. but nevertheless still being able to forge a successful life with meaningful human relationships. I've decided with my wife, my wife of 20 years, we decided that I would leave the practice of law. That was my profession. I ended up going to law school and having a successful legal career. But I left that practice, left a very prestigious and lucrative position. I was the general counsel of a publicly traded company, and was recognized as one of the world's leading intellectual property legal strategists. And so it was a very full career, full of accolades and all that sort of thing. But my wife and I decided that we'd leave that behind, and then I would begin to write books and be an advocate for these kids in foster care. My wife and I also have served as foster parents. We got licensed to be foster parents, and we did that for a period of time. We don't do that right now, as I do my advocacy throughout the country. And then we also actually adopted a little girl. Our fifth child was adopted, who would have gone into the foster care system, but for our adoption. And so it's something that's very, very important to me, and I'm doing everything I can to help change those statistics and help these kids, oftentimes on a one-on-one basis throughout the country, but as broadly as I can. So
okay, well, let's go back a little bit. When you aged out and got out on your own, I mean, what was that process like? Did you have somebody that you stayed with that supported you for a little while, or did you jump into school immediately? I mean, tell us a little bit about that, what the thought process was, and also on top of that, what made you decide to go into law?
Yeah. All right. So I probably have to go back even a little further than that to just kind of explain how I ended where I did. I was on a trajectory to be likely one of those statistics. I had issues with the law. I was not a good student. In fact, as I reflect in my book that I've written to foster kids, I tell them a story about being identified as the worst student one of my teachers had ever had in 30 plus years of teaching. And the reason I knew that is because she told her students for the years after I left not to be like Robert Mooney, who was the worst student she'd had in over 30 years. And so I was not a great student. I failed an entire semester of college. And so a lot of people were like, oh, look at you being a lawyer. You were a great student. It's like, well, that comes with a caveat. So let me tell you a little bit about the failings. Right. So I was on a trajectory to not go to college, to be one of those statistics. But I had an experience when I was a freshman in high school. Towards the end of the third quarter, in the middle of the third quarter of my semester, of my freshman year, I had this experience where for the first time in my life, I realized I had this epiphany. This watershed moment where I realized that I literally had the ability to choose, and I didn't have to do what other people were telling me to do. I didn't have to do what my body told me. I should do what my emotions had to do. It's really a function of, not being completely reactive, but realizing that I had an opportunity to forge my own path in a. Right. And I realized that in a crisis situation. So let's back up and go to when I was first put into foster care. So I came from an abusive environment. My father was physically abusive. There was incredible neglect, sexual abuse in the home, and my mother was very sick, both mentally and physically. We started in a battered women and children's shelter, and then after a couple of weeks in that shelter, the social workers realized, oh man, this woman can't take care of these 7 children, because there were 7 of us. Wow. I was the third of those 7. And so then we went to foster care. My first foster home when I was 6 years old was actually with my best friend. When his parents found out that we were going to be put into state's custody, they immediately signed up to be a emergency home for me to stay. And an emergency home was necessary because the social workers wanted to keep the siblings together. And if you could imagine the difficulty of trying to keep 7 kids.
Oh, I'm sure.
Immensely difficult. I mean, it's hard enough to find placements for 2, 3, 4, but for 7, that's insane.
Yeah.
And but the caseworkers were able to. So 3 weeks later, I went into my second foster home, and that was with a home that was willing to take all 7 of us. Now, the 7 of us didn't make it to the foster home. We started at the hospital to get immunizations and some basic medical care before moving in with this family. And my older sister, who's 4 years older than me, she ran away from the hospital, disappeared, never made it there. The day we moved to that home, my older brother, 2 years older than me, he ran away and didn't spend the first night there. And so it was me and 4 younger siblings in this environment. It was my first time I had to change schools. So again, the first home, I didn't have to change schools because it was in my neighborhood, kind of kept just going to school. But in the second home, we'd moved across the island. I was living in Hawaii, and so we're on Oahu, moved to a completely different part of the island. You know, everything's foreign to me, new home, new school. And at this school, there was a bully who was picking on me. And I was quite small at the time for my grade. I caught up later on, but at the time I was very, very small for my grade, but I was quick. And I had these run-ins with this bully on the playground, and it had gotten physical. And so far, he'd never been able to really get at me because I could get away. And then one day after school, I was up on the second floor, and in Hawaii, the hallways are open to the air, right? You have your classroom on one side, you've got something to cover you from the rain, and then it's open to the outside. So I'm on the second floor.
Except for when the rain's blowing sideways, right?
So I'm on the second floor, open air to my right, classroom's on the left. I'm walking, and there's this bully, and he's coming at me. It's just the 2 of us.
Yes.
And I know what's going to happen. As he comes at me, he swings at me. I happen to have a number 2 pencil in my hand, and as his arm crosses across my body as I duck out of the way, his back's now exposed to me, and I stabbed him. So I stabbed this kid, and then gotten some trouble for that. That was frowned
I'm
upon.
sure.
that was not the right thing to do, apparently. And some people were like, "Oh, look, you're standing up to a bully, you're protecting yourself. Good job, little kid." But the reality was it's not as though there was some sort of calculus going on in my mind. It's like, all right, bully, punch, dodge, stab. It wasn't that. It was purely reactionary. Right. It was purely reactive. If you would have asked me, why did you stab that kid? I would have probably responded, I had no other choice. I had no choice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I had no other choice.
But that's not that would be accurate. That wouldn't be accurate. But to that traumatized 6-year-old kid, that was reality. I had no other choice. And so now fast forward to when I'm 14. So fast forward 8 years. Now my mother has died. My father's parental rights have been terminated, and my siblings are all across. We're in a completely different state. I'm now moved to Utah, living in Utah, still as a ward of the state of Hawaii, and my foster parents, they were having a rough time together, and they encouraged me to reconnect with my biological father. Who I hadn't seen for 4 years because his rights had been terminated. And we reconnect, and I end up going up and living with them. He lives, up in the mountains in southern Utah in a borrowed trailer. My older brother had likewise had left his family, foster family, and he was living with my biological father. Again, not legally, because his rights were terminated. He legally wasn't our father. But, under the circumstances, that's what we ended up doing. And there was some sort of there was some sense of belonging being with my biological brother, being with my father. He had remarried and spent most of his time in his wife's trailer, which was actually 15 miles away down in the valley, where we were up in the mountains in this borrowed double wide. And so it was just me and my brother. I'm 14, he's 16, not a lot of parental supervision. And I mean, frankly, think of whatever, a 14 and a 16-year-old kid, both with pretty traumatic backgrounds. Think of what they would do without that parental supervision, and you're probably right.
Oh yeah, you'd be out
about
there.
it happened. Anyway,
Oh man.
But we didn't have food. We didn't have clothing. The clothing that we had, that I had really came from the generosity of friends. They're like, oh man, you've grown 8 inches. Here, have some of my son's stuff. Right. That's how I was clothed, and not a ton of food. When we didn't have any heat. People think of Southern Utah, they're like, oh, it's nice and warm. Not in the mountains.
No, not in the mountains.
It freezes. We get snow, and we had a little coal stove in the middle of the trailer that would never hold the heat through the night.
Right.
And so my brother and I would trade off as far as who would have to put the coal in the stove at night. And yeah, it just was life.
Yeah.
I'd been living with him for about 4 or 5 months. I think it was 5 months. And my father dropped this bomb on me. And he said, Robert, I think that it's time for us to bring your brothers and sisters back.
Okay. What were you? Were you just floored or?
Oh, I was. I was like
nervous, excited. Yeah.
No. Horrified. And because this is my younger siblings. Again, his rights had been terminated 4 years beforehand. They were all in their permanent homes. My brother, just younger than me, had already been adopted. The next 3 were in the homes that would adopt them. And so they had permanency. They had lives. I have no clue how he thought he was going to get them to come home. But they had stability. They had safety. They had a family. And he wanted to bring them to this. And I was like, no, that's a bad idea. And he didn't like that. He didn't expect that that there'd be resistance. And so he wanted to know why I felt that way. He really got, very, very reactive. And it turned into an argument really quickly. And tempers began to rise as his rose, my rose. Words were exchanged, and I got out of the car when we got to the trailer, and I went inside to try to get away from him. He followed me, and the argument continued on right inside the front door. And it got to a pitch where he was very offended that I didn't view him as an adequate parental figure. And I'm grateful that at 14 I could see that he wasn't, and I definitely didn't want to bring in these kids who I felt some level of protective spirit back from when we were in that same foster home, when it was just me with my 4 younger siblings in this brand new environment. Like, we can't have them come here. And anyway, so it got really heated, and it reached a point where he tried to show me how much progress he had made as a parent by yelling at me, why do you think I don't beat you and your brother anymore? And it's true. And he didn't. And I just said, because we're bigger than you.
Oh gosh.
And because I told you I used to be really small.
Yeah.
Now I wasn't. Yeah. He's 5'9". By this time I'm 5'11". My brother's 6'1". We're both taller than he is.
Yeah.
And I was quite athletic, and the like, but I didn't appreciate the difference between an athletic 14-year-old and a full grown man. Right. There's no comparison in that physical power. And so he invited me very coarsely and crudely to make our argument physical. Think your man, take your best shot. And I'm thinking, so when he goes and it encourages me to make this physical, I'm thinking and feeling my siblings and I, we have literal scars on our body from what this guy's done.
Yeah.
And he probably will deserve. I mean, this is probably some payback that we can just get. We're about ready to just explode. Yeah. And he's literally asking me everything my body says to go and just wail on this guy. And as I'm about to throw my first punch, a thought came in my mind. I had this experience where literally it seemed like time stopped. And a thought came to my mind that said, you are about to hit your father.
Yeah. Wow.
And I realized that I didn't have to. Very quickly, I realized I could just walk to the back of the trailer. I could kick him in the nuts.
Yeah.
I could turn around and walk away. And I realized for the first time, truly realized that I got to choose. I didn't have to do what he was telling me to do. And literally, he's asking me to do it. Sometimes people say, he was asking for it. He literally was asking for it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to do what my body and what my trauma brain said I had to do. I could turn around and walk away.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I turned around, I walked away. It was about a half mile to the nearest neighbor that had a telephone, nearest friend of mine that had a telephone up in these mountains, just dirt roads and trailers and some houses and stuff. And a buddy of mine had a telephone. I went there, called the police, and over process time, I was back in state's custody. And compare and contrast that to the 6-year-old, where the bully does something and I react and I stab.
Right.
This was a time where I had before me and recognized I could do one of a myriad of things. I got to choose whether or not I was going to just give in to what felt natural, give into what felt like the right thing to do. And if I had clocked him and somebody would have said to me, it's like, hey, why did you clock him? I would have said I didn't have any other choice.
Right.
But it would have been false. I had other choices. And that was the first time that I realized that I had other choices. Mm-hmm. And that became the turning point. So at that point, you would say that I was not on a college trajectory.
Right.
And I realized if I wanted to do better, I'd have to, do better in my life and not have these experiences where there's not enough money for food. I was going to have to take my education more seriously. And so for my 4th term of school, I started getting good grades, really good grades. Whereas really poor grades, quarter 1, 2, 3, it was great grades up here. And there was no change in my capacity, but it was a conscious decision. All right, I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to turn it in. And as I did my homework and turned it in, I started to understand the concepts better. So I tested better. And when I wouldn't understand something, then I made the decision, I chose to go seek help from the teachers' aides and the like, so that I could understand. And instantly, with no change in ability, but just a change of a recognition that I got to make choices, I started making better choices. I didn't always make good choices. I made all sorts of bad choices, but they were my choices. But
you overcame them. That's what I love about this.
Well, so but the thing is that it wasn't. I didn't do X. I didn't have to be a victim of my victimization. Yeah. Right. So I'd been victimized. There's no question. But I could choose to not be a victim, and I could choose to start making better choices. And when I made bad choices, they were mine. I could own up to them and do better. So I started making some better choices. Now you asked, what made it so that I ended up going to college and so on and so forth. In process of time, I got a new caseworker when I was 15 years old. And she was one of those God-sent angels who saw me as a human being with potential and not destined to be a statistic. And so she said, well, Rob, at your age, the chances of getting a permanent home are really unlikely. So why don't let's get you into, college as fast as you can go and get as much of your education done and paid for while the state will still pay for everything. Right. And get as much of your education done before you age out. And so I said, all right, well, that's fine. And so in the summer between my sophomore and what became my senior year, I did my junior year at the insistence of my caseworker. I did summer school and to essentially do a full grade so that I would graduate, a year before I otherwise would have. Okay. That had to feel good though. I ended up starting college when I was 16. Oh, wow. Which was kind of bizarre. That's an interesting story to itself. But at the same time, she continued to search. Even though she saw it as unlikely that I would have a permanent home, she still wanted to help me hopefully find one. Excuse me. And so she searched, high and low to find someone who would take this teenager with this incredibly sordid past to come into their home. And and ultimately she found a place that was intended to help me age out, just be a transition place. But ultimately became much, much more than that. It's the place where my kids call grandma and grandpa now.
Okay.
So I moved in with them, right before my senior year began. And then I moved out less than a year later to go to college. So I was only living with them for about 12 months, but continued to develop the relationship thereafter. And they've been an incredible influence in my life.
Oh, that's great.
For good. And it became, a permanent family relationship. Even though I wasn't adopted and I moved out of their home, really a huge chunk of that came after I'd left. In fact, one of the reasons I went, I got my undergraduate degree from Brigham Young University. And the reason I chose to go to BYU wasn't because I grew up always wanting to go to BYU or whatever else. No, it was 10 minutes away from them.
Oh, okay.
And so rather than moving across the country, there are places on the East Coast that I was considering going to. But I didn't want the relationship with that family to be just someone I lived with for a year before I aged out.
Right.
I wanted to continue to develop that relationship. And so that played a major factor as to why I stayed and went to school close by so we could continue to develop that relationship. So they were a huge influence in my life in going to get a professional degree. When I started is really kind of interesting. So in that foster family, they're all doctors. My father, my dad was an eye surgeon, very, very, very good, well-respected eye surgeon in the community. His oldest daughter, my sister, was a pediatrician. Her husband's an ER doctor. The next brother was in medical school, ultimately became a occulofacial plastic surgeon. And then my next brother was about to start medical school. So these are, when I moved in, there's a big age gap. There's between me and the next oldest is 8 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they were all on this, very successful trajectory to be doctors, right?
Which is a miracle in it.
Yeah, which is amazing, right? So me, who has always, as you've changed foster homes, one of the things you try to do is you try to fit in, be a chameleon, try to blend in and be part of something. What I first said I was going to do is I tried going to medicine, right? And so when I started, I was a pre-med. When I filled out my applications, it was as a pre-med major. And my dad said to me, he said, like, Rob, don't go do, what you think everyone else thinks you should do. Don't do that just to blend us. Do what's going to play to your strengths. And I thought about that. And before it ever started, I actually switched over to business. So I did business. I did philosophy as a minor and English as a minor because they were both very fascinating to me. But then I went into business. And so by the time I was ready to graduate from college, I knew I was either going to do business and get a professional degree in business and get an MBA and maybe beyond, or law school. So it was either business or business law. And you asked why I went into law. It really was a function of one thing, and that was to be able to provide for a family. Because I decided when I was 15 years old and I was realizing that I likely wasn't going to have my own family, or that I wouldn't have a adoptive family or the like, I realized that likely the first family that I would have to be mine would be the family that I created. And so I was going to make sure that I could provide for that family. So there was never a time where they were homeless like we were when we were younger, or they were abused or neglected or didn't have food. And so people ask me, what made you go to law school? And some people are like, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to right injustice. None of that for me. The reason I went to law school was to provide for my family. Full stop. And so
don't they make you in law school at some particular time choose like a line that you're going to go into, whether it's criminal justice or into private practice or something like that?
Yeah, there isn't a force to do that. It kind of happens naturally.
Oh, okay.
Your first year's courses are all kind of mandated for you. There's certain things that to be a ABA accredited school, you have to teach in the first year. So these very, very basic courses on criminal law, constitutional law, torts and property law and these sorts of things, contracts. And then from there, really virtually everything's an elective. From there. And so you've got this broad range of courses that you can take, and you can tailor it to what you're interested in. And so yeah, I knew that I wanted to do business law. Okay. I in my business program, I had taken a course in business law and really, really enjoyed it. And so I intended to do once law was where we were going to go, I knew it was going to be business law. And so I clerked. In my first year, I clerked for a federal judge, and saw real litigation side of things in his courtroom. And then when I worked for a firm, I got exposure to kind of business transactions versus business litigation, and they'll want you to choose. So when if you go to a large firm, it's not like on TV where these guys, write the best contracts in the world. They do the best business transactions in the world, and they're the best trial lawyers in the world. It's not like that. You'll go and you'll be the trial, focus on commercial trial practice, and very specific things. And that's what I did. So I enjoyed, the business transaction side of things, but I really enjoyed the litigation side of things. So I became a business trial lawyer, and that was the focus of my career.
Awesome. Well, let's take a quick break here for a moment. And I failed to mention in the opening comments that you're an author as well, and we want to talk about your book a little bit here. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, our guest today, Robert Mooney, is going to talk a little bit more about his book and where he's going with helping foster kids, and that part I'm really looking forward to here. So anyway, you will be right back here on Resilience with Brad Neufeld.
Hi, this is Tamara K. Anderson, and I want to share something special with you. When our son Nathan was diagnosed with autism, I felt like the life we had expected for him was ripped away, and with it, my own heart shattered as well. It's very common for families to feel anger, pain, confusion, and anxiety when a child is diagnosed. This is where my book, Normal for Me, comes into play. It shares my story of learning to replace my pain with acceptance, peace, joy, and hope. Normal for Me has helped change many lives, and I'd like to give this book to as many families as possible. We've put together something I think is really special. My friends and listeners can order copies of my book at a significantly discounted price, and we will send them to families who have just had a child diagnosed with autism or another special needs diagnosis. We will put your name inside the cover so they will know someone out there loves them and wants to help. I will also sign each copy. You can order as little as one or as many as hundreds to be shared with others. So go to my website, tamarakanderson.com, and visit the store section for more information and to place your order. You can bless the lives of many families by sending them hope, love, and peace. Check it out today at tamarakanderson.com and help me spread hope to the world.
Life can change in an instant. When a stroke steals the life you know, it's more important than ever to find the strength to rise up. As a survivor, don't watch the world pass you by. A beautiful next chapter may be waiting for you if you try. We're here to share real stories, resources, and tips to help you on your road to recovery. You're strong, capable, taking life's changes head on. You deserve to say to the world, "Don't count me out."
I'm author Richard Paul Evans. 20 years ago, we created the Christmas Box House to protect and care for abused and neglected children. Did you know we've protected more than 125,000 children? That's enough to fill every seat in both the University of Utah and BYU football stadiums. Did you know we've been helping the victims of human trafficking for more than 20 years, long before people were even talking about it? Did you know that last year alone we served almost 9,000 children, providing 12,000 days of care? That's more than 32 years of care in the last 12 months. Did you know that with more than 700 volunteers, we provided Christmas for nearly 3,000 at-risk children? Did you know that we need your help to do all this? This pandemic has been hard on everyone, but especially these children. If you or your business would like to help through donations or volunteering, we'd love to meet you. Find the Christmas Box House online and go to our website. And thank you for caring.
Welcome back to Resilience with Brad Neufeld. Our guest today is Mr. Rob Mooney. He was a foster kid, and he's sharing his story about what he had to go through to become who he is today. And now you're an author. We talked about your lawyer story a little bit, but I love this part of you. This is when I met you, when you were writing your book here. The book is titled A Foster Kid's Road to Success. And at the time, it wasn't quite finished. And I know you were, I was trying to get you on to interview and everything. And thought, oh, let's just wait until we get things rolling. But now you've got things rolling pretty well with the book.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that process, what it took for you to do that.
Yeah, no. So it's interesting as I would tell my story, and I've never been shy on sharing my story, but it is so unique in corporate America to have individuals who rise to the top of their field that with this kind of a background. And so people tell me all the time, "Oh man, Rob, you got to write a book."
Yeah.
And but with the kind of career that I had and a family with 4 kids, there wasn't a lot of time to write a book. And my career took me all over the place, all over the world to be able to do really, really cool things. But it took me away from my family. And as I told you before, the reason why I was a lawyer was to provide for my family. Yeah. And I came to a realization pretty early on that lots of guys will say, and men and women will say, I only work this hard for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for you. I'm gone all the time for you. And I believe that there can be virtue to making sacrifices to be able to provide for your family. However, if there comes a time where you don't have to do that, but you choose to still do it, you wonder whether or not you were doing it for them all along. And so I was talking to my wife and I said, you know what? People have asked me all my life, like, what would you do if you weren't a lawyer? What would you do? And I have always easily, hands down, I'd write books.
Yeah.
And the first book I want to write is to help foster kids. And so I talked to my wife, and she and I agreed that we'd step away from the law. Again, I had to go talk to my board. We're a publicly traded company, to our CEO, and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And it took a while to. You got to be responsible with that. You're not just going to quit and leave.
Right.
But it took a period of time to find and hire a successor and work with that successor to make sure there's a smooth transition. And then I consulted with them for 6 months, and that all wrapped up in 2019. And I wrote this book, but not the book that people had asked me to write. A Foster Kid Road to Success is not my life story. It's not a, start to finish, this is what happened to me and here's how bad it was and look at all that overcome. It's not that book at all.
Okay.
Rather, what it is, it's a book written directly to foster kids that are in the system right now, teenagers that are in the system right now. And there's enough of my story for the kids to understand from the beginning, okay, this guy knows what it's like. He's been there.
Yeah.
Right. And so there can be a connection of, we're talking foster kid to foster kid. And then I lay out 6 principles that they need to understand and internalize in order to choose a successful life, as opposed to the statistic that people expect them to become. Mm-hmm. And so it's short. It's a very easy read. It's got pictures. My editor's like, it would be nice to have pictures. So there's a picture in every chapter. Okay. And there's enough of my story, and I'll tell stories of things that happened that helped me learn this particular lesson. But it's not a memoir of how horrible it was to be a foster kid. And my desire was not to tell my story, but rather to reach out and connect to these kids. Because every year, over 20,000 kids in America age out. and the statistics that we talked about earlier becomes their reality. I know that they can choose better. Just usually they don't know how. And I wanted to be something of an inspiration to them. So I wrote the book, and given the fact that the target reader who I want to get this in their hands, these foster kids, they're not going to go buy this book, right? And reality is foster parents, their resources are spread thin as well. They're not going to buy the book. Social services, for the most part, their resources are all spread thin. I don't want to tax those resources, but I still want to get into the hands of people. So what I did is I went back to a lot of those business leaders who told me over the years, Rob, you need to write a book. And I went and said, all right, guys, I've written that book. And I want to get into these hands of these kids. Will you buy copies of the book for me to deliver to those kids? And that was very, very well received.
Wow.
And so far, I've received donations from donors in Utah, as far as Florida, California, literally coast to coast, Texas, Idaho. Are where donors have come through to say, hey, listen, we'd like to participate in this. Will you donate X number of books, on our behalf? And each of those books that get donated will have a plate in the front of it that says that this copy has been donated by so-and-so from such and such place. And that's really important to me because I wanted the kids who got a copy of the book to realize, like, hey, somebody in Houston, Texas, cared enough about me to buy this book and get it into my hands. And so that's been something really, really nice. And we've gotten, thousands of books have been donated. And as of right now, today, I pulled up the list just to make sure I had the most current list. We've donated books to either teens in foster care or the organizations that serve them, whether it's social services or nonprofits that partner with social services in the following states: Pennsylvania, Washington, North Carolina, Missouri, Tennessee, Nevada, California, Colorado, Florida, Texas, and Utah. And I love that. And it's gaining traction. There are more and more requests for the book. In fact, today we'll be shipping out probably about 100 copies to a couple places that have requested copies of the book. And so now I speak to groups of foster kids. I tell a little bit of my story and I help inspire them, teach the principles in the book, and then we give that book to those kids if to the extent that they want it. And not only do I speak to kids, but I also speak to caseworkers or prospective foster parents or current foster parents in group settings. Just this week, I spoke with a group in Tennessee.
Tennessee. Wow.
Yeah, Tennessee, where their caseworkers, case managers, and the like, wanted to understand a perspective of, what it takes to be successful as a foster kid and what they can do to help support helping these kids, choose a successful life rather than, again, what the statistics say that they're destined for. And so that's what I do now. So I go and work to get donations for people to go buy the book. People can buy the book on Amazon, right? So if someone wanted a copy, the fastest way to get it is to go to Amazon, and Amazon will have it to them in 3 days. But for people who want to donate, you can go to my website and there's a link. I've partnered I've teamed up with an incredible charity that's been serving foster kids for 25 years out of Salt Lake City called the Christmas Box International.
Nice.
And that was a charity that was started by the author Richard Paul Evans.
Yes, Mr. Richard Paul Evans. Absolutely.
Yes, yeah, and his charity has helped so many children who are going into foster care, and so we've teamed up where people can go and make donations to Christmas Box International, to a nonprofit, and then the Christmas Box will then purchase copies at a very, very steep discount, and go and then have those books then delivered to foster kids across the country. And it's been fantastic. As I told you, we've thus far, I'd love to see our donor base spread across the entire country. Right now, they've come from those 5 states I mentioned before, but we'll continue to go and get donations and then go and deliver these books to these kids, who they can help. And it's fascinating who this book thus far has been able to help, because it just came out in the middle of COVID. The Corona apocalypse is raging, and I was like, do we wait until it's over to launch the book? It's like, no, let's launch it now. So we launched in the middle of the pandemic. So last July is when we did it, and the response has been fantastic. And I only expect to see it grow. And want to be able to put it in the hands of these kids. And sometimes it's to groups, right? So like we just last week did our largest donation to a single organization that we've done so far. There's this great organization called Foster Nation out of the LA area in California. We sent over 250 copies to them. That was our biggest single donation, which was really, really awesome. But I expect to see that, continue to go, and do stuff, throughout the country, and continue to speak to them. So those are large ones, but sometimes there's just one-on-ones. Someone on Instagram, a kid who has aged out will reach out to me and say, I heard about your book. Could I get a copy? Absolutely. And I love those, the individual ones, because I end up developing, an opportunity to just, foster kid to foster kid. Yeah. And so there's this young woman out in Florida, and she is doing everything right. Mm-hmm. Everything right. So she's chosen, I'm going to go to college. All right. So she's gotten accepted to college. Yeah. And she needs to be able to finance it, and she wants to do some service while she's doing it. And so she is in the ROTC program. Awesome. Yeah, wow. You're giving back, and there's power in that, doing that. Plus you're helping your financing. That's great, but it doesn't quite cover everything. So what does she do? She works as a resident assistant at her, in the dorms in her college. Right. And so she's doing everything she needs to. That said, being able to have that connection, that human connection is really valuable. I'll check in on her. I'll say, hey, so-and-so, just checking in. How are finals going? And the amount of appreciation for that human connection that comes back from her is amazing. Mm-hmm. She just it means the world. She calls me Mr. Robert. It's pretty funny. Nice. Mr. Robert. Mr. Robert. Thank you so much. And to have that connection. So even kids who understand they got to figure it out, they still need some sort of support, and hopefully my book can help be that support and lead them to choose to reach out and get the support they need. And I want to see, I just want to see kids' lives change. And the reality is, if just one kid chooses a life of success, then I'll probably have accomplished what I got sent here to do. But I'd love to give it as much as possible. So we have a goal. I'd love to distribute 20,000 copies of these, which would represent, on average, the number of kids who age out every year. I would far rather them get the book when they're 14, 15, 16, and make the certain choices and course corrections that they may need to make.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
There are over 120,000 kids in the system right now that would be in that demographic, and I'd love to get 20,000 out to go get into those kids' hands, and it's been amazing that the traction we've been able to get so far. So,
well, and I know most people are totally unaware that there's that many foster kids out there, and the fact that you're bringing this to your attention. Well, I liked how you said that when you were thinking about writing the book, you decided not to just make it a story about you, but how it could help these foster kids. Is your vision unfolding the way that you had thought, or is it turned into something more magnificent? What are your experience there?
So yes, what I expected, but not entirely. My expectation was to go to speak to groups of kids. And I don't get to do that as much as I would like to. And so what I envisioned before, because I'd been invited to speak to groups of kids aging out prior to writing the book.
Yeah.
And what I thought envisioned doing is speaking to groups of kids and then, giving the book out to whoever wanted that. And that hasn't worked out because of COVID. I still speak to groups of them, but we do it over Zoom, which is an interesting scenario. Those have been a lot of fun. And it was actually really, really crazy. The last one I did a couple of weeks ago, I had, they asked me to do this, keynote presentation, go for, 50 minutes and then maybe 10 minutes of question and answer.
Right.
And I backed out just a little bit and kind of opened them to questions first. Entire time, full questions. The engagement level was amazing. When I go and speak to those groups of kids, this is how I normally start each of those presentations. Not always, but this is how I start to kind of get the engagement. I'll say to the kids, all right, now don't raise your hands. I'm not asking you to raise your hands. I'm just asking you to answer in your mind these questions. Who here has ever failed a class in school? Right?
Every hand goes up. Yeah.
No, you don't have to raise your hands. Who here has had family that struggles with mental illness or substance abuse?
Mm.
All right. Who here has struggled with mental health issues themselves? Mm-hmm. Who here has had some sort of run-in with the law?
Ooh.
Okay. All right. Even though I've told them not to raise their hands,
mm-hmm.
by this time, every kid has raised their hand one or more times, right?
Wow.
And then I'll say, excellent, because these are my people.
Yeah.
These are my people. Every single one of those applied to me. Every single one. And I could go on and do more, to be honest. And I don't do with the kids, but I could. But I do when I speak to foster parents, prospective foster parents or caseworkers. When someone wants to be a foster parent, you have to go through training and licensing and all sorts of, things, maybe a little bit too arduous, maybe not, who knows, but a lot of hoops that you got to jump through in order to be a foster parent. And one of the things you do is you fill out this form that will identify things about the potential foster kids that you would not be willing to have in your home. So for example, would you be willing to have a child in your home who had been sexually abused?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to have a child in your home who is sexually reactive, who is sexually active, who's had substance abuse issues, tendencies to violence, a huge list. It's a big list, right?
Right.
And when my wife and I decided we were going to be foster parents, I'm a firm believer that you go to the least common denominator, right? So the person who's willing to do the least, that's where you go, right? Otherwise, if someone like me who's willing to do anything says, all right, anything goes, and you have a wife, spouse who's less happy about that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And so I just said to my wife, I was like, you fill this out, because whatever you're comfortable with, I'm going to be comfortable with. So you fill that out. And so she's going through, she's like, oh man, sexually abused and reactive and sexually active. I don't know that I can handle that. Substance abuse, not in my home.
Yeah.
And so she did, there was a number of boxes she checked no. And I said to her when it was all over, and I say this to the foster parents that are these trainings, I said, I'm not going to pressure you to do anything you don't want to do, but understand by the way you've answered those questions, you have made it so you would never foster someone just like me.
Wow.
And
that's gotta be a punch to the gut.
It makes you think, right?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
And what I tell the caseworkers and the foster parents is I tell them, it's like, when you have these kids that have this, because all of them have been traumatized, if nothing else, just being removed from your family of origin is a traumatic experience. But the reality is most of them have far more trauma in their background, and they're working on trauma brain, and they've done all sorts of these things that, would be difficult and can cause, problems and behavioral problems and et cetera. Can you look at that child and see the future lawyer? Can you see the future artist, the husband, the father, the wife, the mother? And I beg the parents and the caseworkers, I need you to be able to see that when you see these abused and traumatized children, because most of the time their trauma brain keeps them from being able to see that. And if they can't see that in themselves, they need someone like you to be able to see that in them. And so, yeah, my wife changed some of her answers.
Wow.
You know, and I'm that kid who would, you know, check each of those boxes, you know, right?
Right.
And I'm grateful that I've been able to show that these kids have potential that is immense and immeasurable frequently, and that they need someone to be able to see that in them and help them find a way to choose to be that success. And that's what my book's about.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Rob, I am just so impressed. And may I say thank you because as I told you at the outset, I love working with at-risk teens, and I see these. I've been there in the trenches, so I understand all about it. And it's something that would be very difficult for a lot of people to stomach, to see what's really happening with many of our kids here in the United States. And I'm telling you, the fact that you've stepped up the way that you have, my hat's off to you, friend. Thank you. And
thanks,
God bless you with everything you're doing here. And what you're doing is a very noble cause. And I'll tell you here from the heart of the Resilience Talk Network, we want to help you any way that we can to get this message out and get things rolling and bring the resources to you to help you achieve your desires here, because what you're doing is just very noble cause. Thank you so much.
Yeah, much appreciated.
We're going to take one quick break here, one final break. Our guest today, Mr. Robert Mooney, he's the author of the book, A Foster Kid's Road to Success. And when we come back, please tell us everything you can about how we can get a hold of you and how we can get into your world and how people can contribute to your great cause here. So when we come back, we'll wrap it up with Mr. Rob Mooney.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. You can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Welcome back to Resilience with Brad Neufeld. Our guest today, Mr. Robert Mooney, who's the author of the book, A Foster Kid's Road to Success. And Rob, again, thank you so much. This has just been so inspiring to me, and your story is just one for the ages. That people, well, it fits right in with our narrative of resilience. You showed resiliency, even though you did some things you admittedly did that you were kind of going, man, I shouldn't have ended up where I was. But the fact is you made the right choices, and now here you are. So, yeah. And I when I was working with the prison population a little bit, I would tell them because all of the people would always talk to me about, well, my life's ruined. I've got this big target on my back now, and I'm never going to be. I said, no, don't look at it that way. You've got experiences that nobody else has. Bring those experiences out and talk to people about things that you did and experienced, so that they don't have to go through the same things that you went through. I mean,
yeah,
no,
that's right.
Use your examples here for good. I mean, don't look at it that way. You're looking at it all wrong, kind of a thing. Yeah. But anyway, Rob, the cause that you have, how can people get involved in it? Especially with the books, because I like that too. I'm going to be ordering some myself with the books, because I know a few foster kids that I'd like to pass that out to. But wow, what a concept! I love that.
Yeah. So if you go to my website, it's robertpkmooney.com.
Okay.
And on the website, there's a link to Amazon. If you wanted to purchase it for yourself, that's fine. But if you wanted to donate it, there are buttons that you can push. You can click, and it'll take you to a page with the Christmas Box International to do donations. And the larger the donation, the lower the price of the book, as it were. So for donations, so for example, let me pull that up just so I'm not speaking that turn. There's a button for donations between any number up to $999.
Okay.
Sorry, $99.99.
There you go.
Each of those would be $7.50.
Okay.
Each book, but for donations of $100 and up, then it would be $667 a book. And so people can choose how much they want to donate, and just know that for every $7.50 that they've donated on those below $100, a book's going to get in the hands of the kid with a book plate identifying you as a generous donor of that book. And there's an example of what the book plate looks like there on the website. And then you can also click over for the larger donations of $100 up. And then again, the price per book ends up being $667. And to give you a perspective, on Amazon, I think it's at $12.95. And so those are pretty steeply discounted books that we go and get into the hands of the kids that need it most.
Okay.
And so that's at robertpkmooney.com.
robertpkmooney.com. Okay. And we'll have all of your your website as well as all of your social media accounts in the show notes here at the bottom of the video, so people can go there and check out everything that you're doing. And do you share success stories and things like that on there?
Yes, so I do a lot of different things. In fact, actually, one of the things, given the fact that I'm hoping to speak to and impact these teenagers, it's incredibly uncomfortable for me, but I just started a TikTok account.
Okay.
That's
yeah. Are you going to do a dance on there?
No. I'm going to stay me. And that's not for me. But what I will be doing on there, I literally just started it. We've only had 3 videos on it so far. But actually, as soon as I get off this call, I'm recording 30 today, 30 TikTok videos.
Nice.
And they are, it's a mixture of things, a mixture of just things about me, but more importantly, and because TikTok's so short, right?
Yeah.
It's between 20 and 60 seconds as a
That's
video. There'll be principles directly to foster kids. Teenagers in the system or teenagers that are struggling on principles that will help them choose to be successful and overcome their challenges. And likewise, there'll be short videos for foster parents and caseworkers, that will be directed to them as well. So it'll be mixture of just general interests, stuff, about me so people can get to know me, things, principles from my book. Stuff about my next books, because I'm writing another book that is getting wrapped up about a foster kid. It's a fiction book. That one's so much fun, but it's a fiction book where the protagonist is a teenage foster kid. Cool. So I'm having a great time with that. So just stuff like that. So that's on TikTok, PK Mooney, and then on Facebook, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm on those as well. Robert PK Mooney, and those, a lot of foster care statistics, things that are interesting about foster care advocacy, those sorts of things will pop up. But for anyone who wants to follow me, that's always great and that's helpful. I guess the way the algorithms work is that the more followers you have, the more it gets out to people. That's helpful. Get the message out, but also if you want to make donations at robertpkmooney.com, that's also super helpful. So I can continue delivering books, to all 50 states.
Well, and speaking of which, if you're on our YouTube channel, please hit subscribe right down over here.
There you go.
Because like you say, that algorithm thing, I've never even known the word algorithm until lately. And they're saying, well, you gotta have, the more follows you get or the more subscriptions you get, it helps you spread the word better. So anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Rob, what a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. And please come back and visit us and keep us updated on how things are going. And especially when you finish your new book, I'd like to hear all about it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Brad.
All right. Any final thoughts or?
No, just any kids who read it understand that they absolutely can do it. I don't care what it is. You can do it. And anyone else who be listening, you can help be that support to help those kids do it. So
absolutely. And foster kids, if you're listening to this, there's more help out here than you know. You just need to ask. Don't think that there's no people out here that don't care. There's a lot of people who do. So please come on out. Well, our guest today, again, Mr. Robert Mooney, author of the book, Foster Kids Road to Success. And we look forward to watching this thing unfold, Rob, and we hope to be right here with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brad.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to today's show. You can catch me every morning right here on the Resilience Talk Network. You can find that through our website at resiliencetalknetwork.com. That's resiliencetalknetwork.com, and click on the Listen Live, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, Monday through Friday. If you know of anybody, or if you would like to be a guest on the show to tell your story of resilience, we'd love to have you. You can get a hold of me through my email address. Well, actually, just through the website, or through my Facebook page at bradjneufeld.com, bradjneufeld.com. Anyway, look forward to seeing you next time. But until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.